Dear friends, the parable of the Good Samaritan is by all accounts one of the most popular stories our Lord Jesus ever told. I will spare you the details. But I suggest that we briefly consider the main characters involved in the plot to try to understand why they did what they did. Hopefully, we will get the point and respond accordingly. Let's get started. First, the priest and the Levite, two men of God, who know the law of Moses inside out. They see a man lying in a pool of blood on the roadside. But they were going to the temple to offer sacrifices. So, according to the law, they were right. What about the natural law? The law that is inscribed in the heart of every one of us, if we heard it today's first reading. The law that allows us to stand right from wrong. The law that is followed can help us. Yes. The man follows the voice coming from within. He sees a bleeding man, a victim of a senseless human violence, and takes care of him. It does not matter to him to know who the victim is or where he comes from. He just sees the need and springs into action. That is the bottom line. Sometimes we find ourselves asking questions before we lend our helping hand to those in need. We may even find ourselves criticizing those lazy people who cannot get out there and find a job. Trust me, I've been there. And I've done it myself, and I regretted it. Lately, I have learned to suspend judgment if I am not in the position of doing something good. I will suspend judgment. But here's the question. Have you ever wondered how Jesus could have constructed today's parable for us today in the 21st century to teach us that our neighbor is everyone and anyone in need? I will submit to you that Jesus could have challenged us to realize that our neighbor is that person living in the apartment, in the condo, or the house next door, and to whom I have never said, "Hey, neighbor." It could be the family down the road whose children run a little wild. Or it could be that family of color or that Muslim family that just moved in across the street and makes me nervous. Or that coworker that I cannot stand because he or she constantly gets on my last nerve. The neighbor. It could be that politician whose policies I viscerally reject. Or the gay couple that we see walking around holding hands. Or the relative that I cannot talk to because of their political views. You can continue with the list. But today, the Lord is saying to you and to me, go and do likewise. Go and imitate that stranger who understood that we all have a sacred obligation to show an unconditional love to our fellow men and women. And the fact that Jesus places the Samaritan at the center stage of the story is meant to teach us that our love for one another knows no boundaries, no cultural, political, or religious barriers. All of us are neighbors without borders. If we cannot agree on a whole range of issues, we can at least try to connect at the fundamental level of our humanity. Show compassion and mercy when needed. Pick each other up. Roll up our sleeves and address the needs of our fellow humans, regardless of who they are, what they look like, which language they speak, whether they worship God or not. And I will leave you with this. Notice that in the story, the victim doesn't talk. Maybe he was not in the position of saying anything. He doesn't talk. The Good Samaritan just looks at him and helps. Church fathers have suggested that that is actually our story. That is our story as humans. We've been bruised, we've been beaten down by sin, but Jesus came to our rescue. Jesus is the first Samaritan, the true Samaritan. And whenever we reach out to each other, we are following Jesus, who reminds us today that we are indeed brothers and sisters. We are neighbors without borders and called to be each other's keeper.
This morning we hear the gospel of the Good Samaritan. It's always important to give a little bit of context when we read this story. First, Jews had nothing to do with Samaritans. They avoided them, wouldn't interact with them. They were like horrible people you don't interact with. And so the fact that it was the Samaritan that helped him is very important, which is why when it came to the end, the guy he was talking to didn't say the Samaritan, he said the one who showed mercy, because he couldn't even admit out loud that it was the Samaritan that did the good deed, that treated him like a neighbor. Secondly, it's the road leading from Jerusalem to Jericho and going down. It means that the priest and Levite were leaving Jerusalem, so that means they weren't going to the temple, so they don't have the excuse of, we need to be clean to go do our duties at the temple. No, they were leaving, so they had no reason not to help. Instead, they cross over. They're the ones who should have helped, but they didn't. So Jesus is using this story to teach us that everybody is our neighbor, even the ones we don't like, even the ones who might be our enemies, the ones who might be being differently from us. Everybody is our neighbor. I mean, we are to treat them with love and dignity. No matter where they come from, where they live, they're our neighbor. Be halfway across the world, and they're still our neighbor. We're to treat them with love and mercy. That's hard. It's hard to actually have that view of everyone as our neighbor. But we have to remember all of us are created in God's image and likeness, and so are worthy of being treated with dignity and respect because of that. And so we are our brother's keeper. We are to look out for them as the Samaritan did for the man on the side of the road. The man he should have had nothing to do with. Yet, he stops. Not only does he stop and tend to his immediate wounds, he then takes him to help, gives money to take care of any of his needs there, and promises to pay for anything over that. Now that's going above and beyond, if you ask me. How often do we drive by somebody on the side of the road in need of help? How often do we ignore the needs of the poor, the needy? Because we don't have time or we don't want to look at them or deal with them. And yet Jesus is showing us in this story that that's what we need to do. Do what we can to help those around us because they are our brother, they are our sister. So I challenge us to really look and see, how are we doing at loving our neighbor, at treating them with dignity and respect, at reaching out to those who are in need, or are we passing them by? Going, I don't want to see that. Not recognizing that they are our brothers and sisters, that they are our neighbor who we are called to help. Let us work on trying to emulate the Good Samaritan in our story each day in our own lives. Trying to get better at it each and every day. Imagine if each one of us acted like the Good Samaritan to everyone we met. Imagine the change in our world. And then if we got others to start doing the same. So let us be Good Samaritans to our brothers and sisters. Let us reach out to them in their need. Let us love them and show them God's truth in all that we do.